I bought this old Pattern Makers vise a while ago. It's pretty cool, but it's missing one feature that every other one I've looked at has, and I've looked at hundreds of them. It doesn't have any dogs, and if you've used dogs on a vise before, you'll know how useful they are. On a vise like this, I'd say they're pretty essential, and I have no idea why they weren't already built in. I'm thinking about milling or drilling into the castings to retrofit dogs, and then maybe fixing supporting bodies to the jaw so it's not entirely relying on the castings. I'm not 100% sure whether I want to do that or not, but there's no branding or markings tying it to a maker, so I think it wouldn't be too sacrilegious, but I'm sure some would think I should just leave it alone. I'm also going to restore the vise, but before I get into stripping it down, I'll quickly explain what a Pattern Maker's vise is if you haven't seen one before. It's basically a big vise that can be set in any position by tilting and rotating it, making it more comfortable to work at. And it also has a pivoting front jaw to hold just about any awkward shaped object. Anyway, let's get straight into it and start stripping it down. I'm not exactly sure how to tackle this, but the tilt adjustment bar seems like a good place to start, and straight away the very first nut is stuck solid. I thought I was going to catch my knuckles on the bar there, but it's all good, and a bit of heat did the trick. I expected the bar to come away, but it's pretty well stuck to it. I'm pretty certain that it is a separate piece. I'll try this homemade wedge that I use for removing the chuck from my drill press. That's pretty well stuck as well, so I'll try heating it again. It's not obvious, but it has budged. The wedge has reached its limit though, but it should release with a few hits now that it's been dislodged. It's a bit rusty and it will need straightening out. It's also missing a bracket that locks the tilt of the vise in position, so I'll have to make one of those as well. This lever is for locking the rotation of the vise. All of this will make more sense later on when I install the vise onto my new workbench. Next I'll remove this hub, and it looks like I just need to undo these two bolts. Then the nut for the main vise screw can be taken off. You may have noticed that there's a number 4 being painted on all of the main parts. The only thing I can think of why is there must have been a bunch of them together, either being restored or just about to be restored and marked so as not to mix them up. That came away easily, and the threads on both the screw and the nut look in great condition. Even though this isn't a super desirable brand like an Emmett, Wadkin or Oliver, it still looks like it's been very well made. The castings look great and all the pieces fit together precisely. The vise was actually functioning pretty well. I could have just used it as it is, but I thought it was worth the effort to clean it up and get it working at its best before installing it. This is going very well, just the front jaw assembly to go. There's a screw inside this hole, and I'm guessing that needs to be removed as I can't see any other way of removing the hub. It's still not obvious how to remove it, but this brass washer is loose, so I'll take that off anyway. I'll remove the main screw while I think about how to remove the hub. Just the hub and 2 screws to remove, one top and one bottom of the jaw, and then that's it. It's locked solid, so I'll soak it with WD-40, leave it a while and see if that helps. After looking closer, I've figured out that the hub is threaded on. Now just the last 2 screws. I've tried again, but it's not budging, so I'll leave it to soak overnight. The next morning I went out and bought an impact screwdriver. I haven't used one of these for years, since I was a kid when my dad had one. It also has a large 12mm flat bit, so hopefully that does the trick. After a couple of hits, I put the bit in my cordless impact driver and out it came. I was expecting the threads to be at the top into the jaw and a pin at the bottom end. The second screw isn't quite as easy though. I kept trying the handheld and cordless driver and I couldn't get it to budge. At least I know where the threads are now after removing the other one. So I'll try and work some oil into the threads. Not easy though, being hidden underneath the jaw. I've decided to leave it to soak in and start degreasing all the other parts. I'll keep working more oil into it and keep trying to get it to budge. I'll be putting the parts into rust remover, and to help with that process, first I'll remove any oil or grease. There's a few brass and stainless steel parts, so I'll put those aside and finish degreasing the larger pieces. I remembered I had this air ratchet in storage. I haven't used it for years, so let's see if this can release that screw. That's begrudgingly starting to go, and just as I was getting somewhere, you can't actually see because my cap's in the way, but I just snapped the bit. I don't have another one, so I'll see if I can grind it down to finish the job. I'm not confident, but worth a go. I'll go back to the cordless, as I reckon the air ratchet will just snap the bit, especially as there isn't too much left of it. It still doesn't want to go, even though the air ratchet earlier did move it a turn or two. I tried maybe a dozen more times. I was starting to lose hope, wondering what I could do next. Then all of a sudden it started to move. It's probably not obvious from the footage, but it took hours to get that screw out. I'll have to clean up the end where it got a bit distorted, but it's still usable. I'll quickly degrease those last parts and then start to remove the rust. I'll get rid of the painted numbers so the rust remover can get at it. I'm spraying on acetone to soften it up. There's also bits of dry glue here and there, so I'm removing those as well. A couple of months ago I bought a cheap sandblasting unit that I haven't even tried yet. I thought about using it here on these parts, but a lot of the surfaces are machined and I don't want to damage them. I've had this bottle of Evaporous for a few years and used it quite a few times. For the amount of parts that I'm doing here, I bought another 5 litres. Even more would have been better, but it isn't cheap, so I'll manage with what I have and do them in batches. I left it overnight and they look pretty good. Some parts are better than others. The jaws look great, but some of the other pieces will have to go back in for a while longer. I'm scrubbing them first with the dirty water, then taking them outside and giving them a good rinse with clean water, which should help to prevent them from rusting again. There's a slight film of rust here and there, but it's very light and wipes away easily. On a couple of the pieces, especially the hinge, it's done a good job, but it hasn't quite got it all, so I'll do those again with the other parts. I still need to do the main screw and the square beam, but that will be round 3. While they're in the rust converter doing their thing, I'll start working on the jaws and do something about adding dogs. I've got a piece of plywood just to show what I was thinking. I could mill these sections out here and slip the dogs down and through this webbing. The webbings are really quite thick and I think they'd be pretty strong. The only thing I'm concerned about is this web here. It's quite a lot lower than the top, and because it's lower, I think the dog would put a bit of leverage on it and I think it may crack it. The one at the back, I'd be pretty confident that would be okay. Like I say, they really are quite thick. I've had lots of ideas and I think this is the best one. Rather than use a regular dog, make something like this. Again, just mocked up out of plywood. It just hooks over the edge and I think it's fairly obvious, but this inside face will go against the inside face of the jaw and that will push this bottom down into the back of the jaw and it should be pretty secure. So I'll make these next out of aluminium. If I like them, then I'll mill into the jaws. Well, that was a good start, and I've only just put that new blade on. One of the teeth where it's been welded is sticking out to the side and also to the front. It's not a cheap blade either. I've used many from this well-known brand, and this is the only time it's happened, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. That fixed it, so now I can start milling, and I'll begin by squaring up the blocks. While it's clamped in this position, I'll take out this corner, which will be the jaw of the dog or the bit that will contact the workpiece. I still need to take more off this corner, so I'll swap out the parallel for a taller one. When I first bought this milling machine, I had no idea what I'd use it for. I just got excited about it and thought it'd be fun. But it's amazing how often I use it, and that's the same as the metal lathe as well. They really are super useful machines. Now I just need to mill out this notch so it will hook over the jaw, and that's the milling done. I'll chamfer all of the edges to tidy them up, but also so they'll slide into the dog holes easier. I'll round over one corner of the jaw section so when I'm clamping round or irregular shaped pieces in the vise, it won't dig into the material. I'm using a file with a safety edge with no teeth, so it's not cutting downwards and only into the rounded corner. Here's the sandblaster that I mentioned, and I thought I'd try it out for the first time and put a texture on the dogs. That really is good fun, and even though the texture will eventually get scratched off, I reckon it looks great. Next I'll put the main beam and the screw into the rust converter. Those pieces came out pretty good, so I'll move on and set up for milling into the jaws. I need to move my vise over to make room. It's a bit of a pain as it's trammed in, meaning the jaws have been precisely set to be in line with the bed. Whenever you move it, you have to spend the time to tram it back in, just like what I'm doing here with the dial indicator. I'm setting this piece of 2-inch square mild steel bar, which I'll clamp the jaw to. An angle plate would have been the go, but I don't have one, so I'm just improvising. I'm no expert at this stuff, but I think that looks okay. I'm still not 100% I should be doing this, but I really do want the vise to have dogs. Something though feels wrong about milling into a casting. I looked at it for about 5 minutes or so, and then I decided to go for it. Fingers crossed that I don't ruin them. I'm not super confident with my setup, so I'm taking light cuts with lots of passes. I could have probably hogged straight into it and it would have been fine, but I'm in no rush. I'm using a 10mm end mill and I need a 12mm slot, so now I've established the slot, I need to widen it on both sides. That's the first one done and it went well, so on to the next one. I will need to finish them with files and also square up the corners. That has been worrying me, but now I feel a lot better about it. Next, I'll square them up. I'm using a coarse file first to remove most of the corner, then finishing it with a smoother file with a safety edge ground onto it, and I just did that on the belt grinder. A safety edge allows you to work on one side at a time and makes it very easy to achieve a crisp square corner. It didn't take too long, I can't remember exactly, but it was about 10 minutes for each one. I reckon that's going to work awesome, and even though I wasn't confident at the start, I'm glad I did it. I just need to round over the edges with a Dremel. Next, I'll prep all of the pieces for painting. Even though I used the rust converter, there's some surface rust reappeared here and there, but it's very light and easy to remove with a wire brush. The handle on the pivoting jaw is very pitted. It does screw in, and I thought about making a new one, but it should clean up well enough with some sanding. I mentioned earlier that the tilt adjustment bar needs straightening, so I'll do that next, and I'll do it by just hitting the high spots until it looks okay. I could go crazy with it and machine it, but there really is no need. I'm happy with that, so I'll clean up all the parts with Metho ready for painting. I've put a few coats of finish on and left it overnight to dry. We're almost ready to assemble. I just need to get the screw and square beam out of the rust converter. It didn't do quite as good a job of these, but I think that was more my fault by not degreasing them well enough. It still did an okay job though, and they'll be easy enough to finish with a wire wheel. These pots don't get painted, so I'll spray them with Bow Shield T9 to prevent them from rusting. The screw will get greased, but the square beam will be left exposed. There's one last thing to do before assembling the vise, and that's clean up these deformed screws. I'm grinding them shorter, which won't affect how they work, and then I'll finish them on the lathe. I'll also turn down the sides where they mushroomed out and wedged against the side of the boards in the jaw. It just needs a new slot, which I'll do with a slitting saw on the milling machine. While the back jaw's separated, I'll use it to mark out where I need to make a recess in the workbench, as that'll be easier than lumping the whole vise into position. I'll clean up this mat that I've been using. I love this thing, and I reckon it's one of the best things I've bought for the workshop. A bit of soapy water, a quick rinse, and it's like new. Nothing at all sticks to it. I'm going to get a couple more of these. One will be for woodworking and glue-ups. If you're interested in getting one, I'll put a link in the description. This is the fun part. Putting it all back together is pretty straightforward now that I know exactly where everything goes and everything's been cleaned, including all of the threads. I realised that these sections didn't need painting. I could just leave them to wear off, but it's easy enough to scrape them off as the paint hasn't fully hardened. I may have to play around with how far the hub screws in, as this determines how the tapering function works. It seems about right, so I'll lock the hub with the grub screw, but I'll be able to adjust this later if needed. I've realised that the tapering lever is on the wrong side. I did know that it went to the right, but I didn't think about the vise being upside down when I installed it. Everything works so much better than before, making it all seem worth the effort. I could have just installed it on the bench as it was, but this is going to be amazing. There's still the tilt locking bracket to make and a handle, but I think I'll get on with installing it onto the workbench. I've got one problem though. If I cut a section for the back jaw to get the full rotation of the vise, I'd have to make this cut at an angle, which is fine, but the jaws of the vise would hit the metal legs, which isn't so good. I could shift the workbench top over an inch, which would work out, but I have a different solution. I should say that the jaw doesn't have to be chopped in. Many people install them with the hinge at the very front edge of the tabletop, which then has all the clearance you need, but it does sit a long way out from the workbench, and not only would that be cumbersome, but it also looks a bit odd. I've not seen this before, but I think I'm going to chop just the back half of the jaw in, which should give me the clearance and still look like it belongs to the workbench and not just hanging off it. It feels a bit wrong cutting into a new workbench top, but here goes. Next I'll take measurements and then chop the hinge into the worktop. Next I need to remove this section for the back of the vise to drop into. None of this needs to be super tidy, it won't be seen, it just needs to be clearance for the vise to properly operate. Now the hinge is fitted, I need to cut away clearance underneath to house the rounded hub. This isn't the easiest thing to do, working underneath, but there's no way I'm going to flip over the workbench, so I'll just have to manage. Again, it doesn't need to be pretty, it just needs enough clearance for the back hub to rotate freely. I'll drill pilot holes first so I have positions underneath to drill recesses for nuts and washers. The bolts are the right size, but they're not sitting flush as the edge of the countersink is a bit rough, so I'll quickly clean those up on the drill press. I was hoping that it would just drop in, but it's catching on something. I've only showed me adjusting the fit once, but it did actually take 4 goes. These vices were originally fixed with wood screws, but I thought a bolt would be a more secure fixing, especially over time. Plus I couldn't find a wood screw big enough to fill that countersink. The problem is though, there's only just enough room for a nut on the underneath. It's a bit fiddly, but I can just about tighten them. That's the tilt sorted, but when I rotate the back jaw, it hits the bench top, so I need to make some adjustments. That's the rotation sorted out as well, so now I need to fit the tilt locking bar. As I mentioned earlier, the locking bracket was missing when I bought the vise, so I'll quickly make one and also a lever to lock the bar onto the bracket. I was going to completely make these pieces off camera, but I know some of you would still like to see the whole process, so I did film it, but I'll get through it quickly. Even though the bracket gets installed under the bench, you will still be able to see it. So I'm going to the effort of making it sort of look like an original part. I could have fabricated something functional and much quicker, but I thought this was worth it. That's the bracket finished and ready to paint, but here's the prepared pieces for the lever to try and replicate the other one. I thought I'd show it first so you can see how I did it, but I did weld it and grind it off camera. While the paint's drying, I'll make the main vise handle from this piece of white oak. I just need a couple of caps and I had to glue 2 pieces of oak together to get a blank wide enough. After turning it round on centres, I was planning on mounting it in the chuck so I could drill a recess in the end and then finish the cap, but I realised it didn't fit on my only chuck, so instead I'll finish them on the metal lathe. I left that to dry overnight. It's the next morning and I had to modify the tilt bracket as the corner interfered with the back hub of the vise. That's looking good, but there's a problem with the rotation. Now I look at it, it's all fairly obvious. Anyway, I ground off more clearance, so now it should work. That's got it, it's working now, and here you can see the 2 levers with the right one for locking the rotation. Next I'll line the jaws, and I'll do that with this stuff. It's called Crubber. I've never used it before, but it looks like it should work very well. Before I glue the liners, I'll glue the end caps onto the handle, and it really is starting to come together. To glue the crubber onto the jaws, I'll use epoxy. From a quick search that I did, it seems to be the go, although you can use just about any glue that you have. I'll clamp it overnight with a piece of core flute between, and even though I've cleaned a couple of spots off the inside faces, I wouldn't want the two pieces to glue together if there's any stray epoxy still there. It's not coming away easily like I expected, and you can see why the epoxy has seeped through the crubber and onto the face. That's disappointing, but I have enough to do it again, so I'll scrape it off with an old cheap chisel and have another go. I've decided to remove the back jaw this time and then fix the crubber with contact adhesive. I'll make it slightly oversized and then trim the edges afterwards. I could have cut the whole epoxy section out of the video, but I thought it may be useful to someone if they ever try the same thing. Now that the jaws have been lined, the dogs no longer fit, so I just need to widen the slot. Here's a quick demo of the dogs in action, clamping a small board. I think they work great. And here's an odd shaped piece, which I'll use the taper function along with the dogs. I'm so glad I machined the dog holes. I really was worried about whether I was doing the right thing, but now I'm pretty convinced I did. Next, I'll drill dog holes in the bench top to further extend the usefulness of the dogs. I turned a couple of dogs from aluminium off camera. I just need to mill a flat on them. I'm not exactly sure how I'll use the vise. I'll find out over time, but with its versatility, it's definitely going to be useful. In this position, it could be handy for raising the workpiece for working on the end of a board, like dovetails, for example. Then it could be positioned to work on something horizontally. I think that could also be handy at some point as well. And it could also go anywhere in between at any rotation or tilt, which could be useful when carving or working on odd-shaped workpieces. I think you have to agree that it's a versatile vise and it's going to be super handy one way or another. And one last quick demo of the taper function with my door wedge. I think that I do need to adjust the front hub to give me a touch more angle, but I'll work that out later on. I'm thrilled to bits with it, and I reckon it looks awesome with the new workbench. I still need to install the homemade quick release vise on the other end of the workbench, but I'll do that later. I think I mentioned it in the first workbench video, but I only built the workbench just because I bought this vise and it didn't go on any of my other workbenches. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think of the vise and look out for it in future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.